In my opinion, when someone avoids you, it's rarely about hate. Most times, it's about pain they don't know how to face. This story is for anyone who's ever been afraid to let love in again. So take a moment, get comfortable, and let me tell you this story. And kindly tell us where you are watching from. Why do you always ignore me? David froze halfway up his front steps. His hand gripped the railing. Behind him, groceries sat in the trunk of his car. His daughter Maya was waiting inside. He had 17 things to do before dinner. And now this. He turned slowly. Claire stood on her porch next door, arms crossed. She wasn't angry. That would have been easier. She looked hurt, confused, like she'd been carrying this question for months and finally couldn't hold it anymore. I don't ignore you, David said. Yes, you do. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Every morning when I wave, you look away. When we pass on the sidewalk, you speed up. Last week I held the door for you at the market, and you took the other entrance. David felt his jaw tighten. He wanted to walk inside, lock the door, pretend this conversation never started. But something in her eyes stopped him. I'm not trying to bother you, Claire said quietly. I just want to know what I did wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. Then why? The question hung in the air between their two houses. The September wind moved through the trees. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. David looked at her. Really looked at her. She was maybe 40. Dark hair pulled back in a loose tie. Simple jeans and a cardigan. No makeup. She didn't need it. There was something soft about her face. Something that made you want to trust her. And that was the problem. Because you remind me of what I lost, David said. The words came out before he could stop them. Claire's expression shifted. The hurt faded. Something else took its place. Understanding, maybe. Or sympathy. He hated both. I'm sorry, she said. Don't be. David turned back toward his house. It's not your fault. Wait. He stopped but didn't turn around. I lost someone too, Claire said. David's chest tightened. He kept his back to her. I'm not trying to replace anyone, she continued. I just thought maybe we could be neighbors. That's all. He wanted to say something kind, something human, but the words wouldn't come. So he walked inside and closed the door. Maya was in the living room, building something with blocks. She was 7. Dark curls like her mother. Eyes that saw too much. Was that Miss Claire? Maya asked without looking up. Yeah. Why don't you like her? David set his keys on the counter. I like her fine. You never talk to her. I talk to her. No, you don't. Maya placed a blue block on top of a red one. You act weird when she's around. David opened the fridge. He needed to start dinner. Chicken probably. Maybe pasta. Her grandson visited yesterday, Maya said. He's 8. His name is Leo. He has a skateboard. That's nice. He asked if I wanted to ride it. I said I had to ask you first. David turned. You did the right thing. So can I. We'll see. Maya sighed. She'd heard "we'll see" enough times to know what it meant. David pulled out the chicken. His hands moved automatically. Cut. Season. Heat the pan. He'd made this meal 100 times. Maybe more. Through the kitchen window, he could see Claire's house. The lights were on. A warm glow behind the curtains. He imagined her inside. Making tea maybe. Reading a book. Living a quiet life that looked nothing like his. 5 years ago, David's wife Sarah had been alive. They'd lived in a different house then. A smaller one across town. Maya had been too. Life had felt full. Chaotic, yes. Exhausting, definitely. But full. Then Sarah got sick. It happened fast. Too fast. One day she was fine. The next she wasn't. 6 months later, she was gone. David had moved after that. Couldn't stay in the old house. Too many memories. Every room held her voice. Her laugh. The way she hummed while folding laundry. He'd found this place a year later. Quiet street. Good schools. A fresh start. Except it wasn't fresh at all. He carried Sarah with him everywhere. In the way he made coffee. The way he folded Maya's shirts. The way he still set the table for 2 before remembering. And then Claire had moved in next door. It was a Tuesday morning 3 months ago when David first saw her. He'd been loading Maya into the car for school when a moving truck pulled up. He didn't think much of it. The house had been empty for months. Someone was bound to move in eventually. Then Claire stepped out of a small sedan. David's breath had caught. She looked like Sarah. Not exactly. Not in the details. But in the way she moved. The way she tilted her head when she was thinking. The way she smiled at the movers as they carried boxes inside. Sarah used to smile like that. Easy. Warm. Like the world was worth being kind to. David had turned away and driven Maya to school. But after that, every time he saw Claire, his chest ached. His throat tightened. He felt like he was looking at a ghost. Not Sarah, but the life he used to have. The happiness he used to feel. The version of himself that knew how to laugh without forcing it. So he avoided her. He took the long way to his car. He checked the mail when her car wasn't in the driveway. He turned down the volume when Maya mentioned her. It was easier than facing what he'd lost. The chicken was almost done when Maya appeared in the kitchen doorway. Dad. Yeah. Can I ask you something? David glanced at her. She looked serious. Too serious for 7. What is it? Do you miss Mom? The spatula in David's hand went still. Every day, he said quietly. Me too. Maya came closer. She leaned against the counter, watching him cook. Miss Claire seems nice, she said after a moment. David didn't respond. I think Mom would have liked her. David's jaw clenched. He flipped the chicken. The pan hissed. You don't know that, he said. Yes, I do. Maya. Mom liked everyone. You always said so. That was true. Sarah had been the kind of person who made friends in grocery store lines, who remembered names and asked about people's days, who saw the good in everyone, even when they couldn't see it in themselves. That's different, David said. How? He didn't have an answer. Maya watched him for another moment. Then she went back to the living room. David stood alone in the kitchen, listening to the sound of blocks clicking together. The chicken sizzled. Outside, the sun was setting. The sky was turning pink. Through the window, he saw Claire step onto her porch. She was carrying a watering can. She moved to the potted flowers by her door and tipped the can gently. David watched her. She didn't look over, didn't wave, didn't try to catch his eye. She just watered her flowers and went back inside. And for some reason, that made David feel worse than anything else. Saturday morning, David woke to the sound of wheels on pavement. He sat up in bed, disoriented. The clock read 7:30. Too early for a weekend. He pulled on a shirt and went to the window. A boy was skating in Claire's driveway. Small. Maybe 8 or 9. Dark hair. Focused expression. He pushed off with one foot, wobbled, caught his balance, and kept going. Leo. Maya had mentioned him. Claire's grandson. David watched for a moment. The boy fell. Got up. Tried again. There was something determined about him. Something that reminded David of Maya when she was learning to ride her bike. He turned away from the window and went downstairs. Maya was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal. She was staring out the window at Leo. Can I go outside? She asked. It's early. He's already outside. That's different. Why? David poured himself coffee. Because I said so. Maya frowned but didn't argue. She knew when to push and when to stop. David sat down across from her. He tried to drink his coffee. Tried to think about his day. He had work to catch up on. Bills to pay. Laundry to fold. But his mind kept drifting to the conversation with Claire. The way her voice had sounded. Calm. Honest. Not accusing him. Just asking, why do you always ignore me? He'd been rude. He knew that. She didn't deserve it. But he didn't know how to fix it either. By 9 o'clock, Maya had asked to go outside for more times. Finally, David gave in. Fine, he said. But stay in the front yard. Maya's face lit up. She ran to the door, grabbed her shoes, and was outside in seconds. David stood by the window and watched. Maya walked slowly toward Claire's driveway. Leo was still skating. He saw her and stopped. They talked for a moment. David couldn't hear what they were saying, but he saw Leo nod. Then he handed Maya the skateboard. Maya's eyes went wide. She looked back at the house. David raised a hand. She smiled and stepped onto the board. Leo held her arm to steady her. She wobbled. Laughed. Tried again. David felt something loosen in his chest. He hadn't seen Maya laugh like that in a long time. 20 minutes later, Claire came outside. She was carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. She handed one to Leo and one to Maya. They both thanked her. Then Claire looked toward David's house. Their eyes met through the window. David's first instinct was to step back, to disappear, to pretend he hadn't been watching. But he didn't. Instead, he opened the front door and walked outside. Claire stood still on her porch. She didn't smile, didn't wave, just watched him approach. Morning, David said. Morning. They stood there for a moment, the space between their yards feeling wider than it was. Your grandson seems like a good kid, David said. He is. Claire's voice was careful, guarded. He's visiting for the weekend. David nodded. He looked at Maya and Leo. They were sitting on the curb now, drinking lemonade and talking. I'm sorry, David said quietly. Claire tilted her head. For what? For the way I've treated you. It wasn't fair. She didn't respond right away. She just looked at him. Really looked at him. Like she was trying to decide if he meant it. I understand, she said finally. Grief makes us do strange things. David's throat tightened. I'm not trying to be anyone's replacement, Claire continued. I'm just trying to live my life. And maybe make a friend or two along the way. I know. Do you? David met her eyes. I'm working on it. Claire studied him for another moment. Then she nodded. That's all I'm asking. The weeks that followed were different. Not easier. Not simple. But different. David started waving when Claire waved. He stopped avoiding her at the mailbox. When they passed on the sidewalk, he said hello instead of looking away. It was small. But it was something. Maya noticed. You're being nicer to Miss Claire, she said one night at dinner. I was always nice. No, you weren't. David sighed. Eat your broccoli. Maya grinned and stuffed a piece in her mouth. Claire's grandson Leo visited again the following weekend. This time, Maya asked if she could go over before David even had a chance to say no. Please, she begged. We're going to build a fort. David hesitated. Not because he didn't trust Claire, but because letting Maya go felt like opening a door he'd been keeping shut. Okay, he said finally. But be back by 5. Maya hugged him and ran out the door. David stood alone in the quiet house. He walked to the kitchen, made coffee, sat at the table. The silence felt heavier than usual. He tried to work, tried to focus on emails, but his mind kept wandering. Finally, he stood and looked out the window. Claire's backyard was visible from the kitchen. Maya and Leo were there, draping blankets over lawn chairs. Claire was handing them clothespins. She was smiling, laughing at something Leo said. David watched her. She looked happy, not in a loud way, just content. He wondered what that felt like. An hour later, there was a knock at the door. David opened it to find Claire standing on his porch. She was holding a plate covered in foil. I made cookies, she said. Thought you might want some. David blinked. Oh, thanks. He took the plate. Their fingers brushed for half a second. David pulled his hand back quickly. Maya's having a great time, Claire said. Good. That's good. An awkward silence settled between them. Well, Claire said, I should get back. Yeah. Thanks again. She turned to leave, then paused. David? Yeah. She looked at him carefully. You don't have to keep punishing yourself. David's chest tightened. I'm not. Yes, you are. Her voice was gentle. Not accusing. Just honest. I can see it. Every time you look at me, every time you pull away, you're carrying something you don't need to carry alone. David didn't know what to say. Claire gave him a small, sad smile. Just think about it. Then she walked back to her house. David stood in the doorway, holding the plate of cookies, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath him. That night, after Maya was asleep, David sat in the living room with the lights off. He did this sometimes. Sat in the dark. Let his thoughts run. On the mantel across from him was a photograph. Sarah, smiling, holding baby Maya. It had been taken in the hospital the day Maya was born. Sarah looked exhausted. Happy. Alive. David stared at the photograph. He'd looked at it so many times that he didn't really see it anymore. It was just there. A reminder. A weight. But tonight he saw it. He saw the way Sarah's eyes crinkled when she smiled. The way her hand rested protectively on Maya's tiny head. The way she looked at the camera like she was looking at him. She'd loved him. He'd loved her. And then she was gone. David's throat ached. His eyes burned. He missed her. God, he missed her. But somewhere, beneath the grief, another feeling was starting to surface. Guilt. Guilt because he'd laughed at something on TV last week and forgot to feel bad about it. Guilt because Maya had asked for pancakes, and he'd made them without thinking about how Sarah used to make them better. Guilt because when he looked at Claire, he didn't just see what he'd lost. He saw what he might still have. And that terrified him. The next morning, David woke to find Maya already dressed and eating breakfast. Can I go to Miss Claire's again? She asked. It's Sunday. So don't you want to hang out with me? Maya looked at him like he'd asked a ridiculous question. We hang out every day. David couldn't argue with that. Fine, he said. But don't make a habit of this. Maya grinned and finished her cereal in record time. An hour later, David was alone again. He tried to clean the kitchen, tried to fold laundry, tried to do anything that would keep his mind busy. But Claire's words kept echoing in his head. You don't have to keep punishing yourself. Was that what he was doing? Punishing himself? He didn't think so. He was just surviving, getting through each day, taking care of Maya, doing what needed to be done. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe survival wasn't enough anymore. At noon, there was a knock at the door. David opened it to find Claire standing there. No plate this time. Just her. Hi, she said. Hi. Can I talk to you? David hesitated. Then he stepped aside. Come in. Claire walked into the living room. She looked around, taking in the space. The worn couch. The scattered toys. The photograph on the mantel. Her eyes lingered on the photograph. She was beautiful, Claire said softly. David's throat tightened. Yeah. Claire turned to him. I lost my husband 4 years ago. David went still. Cancer, Claire continued. It took 14 months. By the end, he didn't even look like himself anymore. David didn't know what to say. I moved here to get away from the memories, Claire said. Start fresh. But the thing about grief is that it follows you, no matter how far you run. David nodded slowly. I see you doing the same thing, Claire said. Running. Hiding. Keeping everyone at arm's length because it's safer than letting them in. I'm not. Yes, you are. She wasn't angry. Just certain. And I get it. I really do. But David, you have a daughter. And she's watching you. She's learning from you. And if you teach her that love is something to be afraid of, she'll carry that with her for the rest of her life. David felt like he'd been punched in the chest. Claire took a step closer. I'm not asking you to forget your wife. I'm not asking you to move on. I'm just asking you to stop running. I don't know how, David said quietly. Yes, you do. Claire's voice softened. You just have to let yourself try. The following week, David did something he hadn't done in 5 years. He invited someone over for dinner. It wasn't planned. It just happened. Maya had been talking nonstop about Leo, about how they were building a treehouse, about how Claire had taught them how to make paper airplanes, about how they'd had a water balloon fight in the backyard. And David realized something. His daughter was happy. Really, genuinely happy. And part of that happiness came from Claire. So when Maya asked if Leo and Claire could come over for spaghetti, David said yes. Claire arrived at 6 with a bottle of wine and a loaf of garlic bread. I wasn't sure what to bring, she said. This is perfect, David said. He meant it. Dinner was chaotic. Maya and Leo talked over each other. They told stories. They laughed. They spilled lemonade on the table, and David didn't even care. Claire smiled the whole time. And David found himself smiling too. After the kids went to play in the backyard, David and Claire sat at the table with their wine. Thank you for this, Claire said. For what? For letting me in. I know it wasn't easy. David looked at her. Really looked at her. She wasn't Sarah. She never would be. But she was kind. And she was here. And she understood what it felt like to lose someone you loved. It wasn't easy, David admitted. But I'm glad I did it. Claire smiled. Me too. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. The kind of silence that didn't need to be filled. Then Claire spoke. Can I ask you something? Sure. What are you afraid of? David took a sip of his wine. Forgetting. Claire nodded slowly. Forgetting her? Yeah. You won't. How do you know? Because love doesn't work like that. Claire's voice was steady. Sure. You don't forget the people you love. They become part of you. They shape who you are. And no matter what happens next, they're still there. David felt tears sting his eyes. He blinked them away. I don't want to replace her, he said quietly. You won't, Claire said. But David, you can't live in the past forever. At some point, you have to let yourself live in the present. David looked out the window at Maya and Leo. They were chasing fireflies. Laughing. Alive. I don't know if I'm ready, he said. Claire reached across the table and rested her hand on his. You don't have to be ready, she said. You just have to be willing. Over the next few weeks, something shifted. David stopped thinking of Claire as the neighbor he needed to avoid. He started thinking of her as a friend. They had coffee on Saturday mornings while the kids played. They talked about small things. Books. Weather. The news. And slowly, carefully, they talked about bigger things. David told her about Sarah. About the way she used to sing off-key in the shower. About how she'd always burnt toast but refused to admit it. about how she'd wanted to travel the world but never got the chance. Claire told him about her husband, Tom, about how he'd been a high school teacher, about how he'd coached Little League on weekends, about how he'd known he was dying but spent his last days making sure she'd be okay without him. They shared their grief, and in doing so they made it lighter. One evening in late October, David and Claire sat on his porch while Maya and Leo raked leaves in the yard. "They're good together," Claire said, watching the kids. "Yeah," David agreed. "Leo doesn't have many friends. His parents are going through a divorce. It's been hard on him." David glanced at her. "I didn't know. He doesn't talk about it much, but I can see it. The way he holds things in. The way he tries to be strong." David knew that feeling. "Maya's the same way," he said. "She never complains. Never asks for much. Sometimes I worry she's too good at hiding how she feels." Claire nodded. "Kids are resilient, but they're not invincible." David watched Maya laugh as she jumped into a pile of leaves. Leo jumped in after her. They both disappeared in a cloud of orange and red. "I want her to be happy," David said quietly. "I want her to have a normal childhood. But I don't know if I'm giving her that." "You're doing better than you think." "How do you know?" Claire smiled. "Because she's happy, and she knows you love her. That's more than a lot of kids get." That night, after Claire and Leo left, Maya came into the kitchen where David was washing dishes. "Dad." "Yeah." "Do you like Miss Claire?" David's hands went still in the soapy water. "She's nice," he said carefully. "Do you like her?" David turned off the faucet. He dried his hands and turned to face his daughter. "Why are you asking?" Maya shrugged. "I just wondered." David knelt down so he was eye level with her. "What do you think?" "I think she makes you smile," Maya said. "You don't smile a lot, but you do when she's here." David's throat tightened. "Would it bother you if I liked her?" he asked quietly. Maya thought about it. Really thought about it. "No," she said finally. "I think Mom would want you to be happy." David pulled her into a hug. She wrapped her small arms around his neck and held on tight. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too, Dad." November came. The air turned cold. The leaves fell. The days grew shorter. David and Claire fell into a rhythm. Coffee on Saturdays. Dinners on Wednesdays. Walks in the evening while the kids rode bikes. It felt easy. Natural. Like they'd known each other for years instead of months. But David still kept a part of himself locked away. He didn't hold her hand. Didn't kiss her. Didn't let himself think about what might happen if he let go completely. Because letting go felt like betrayal. The first week of November, Claire invited David and Maya to her house for Leo's birthday. It was small. Just the four of them. Cake. Ice cream. A few presents. But it felt like more. It felt like family. After the kids went outside, David helped Claire clean up the kitchen. They worked in silence. Passing plates. Wiping counters. Moving around each other like they'd done this 100 times before. Then Claire spoke. "Can I tell you something?" David looked at her. "Of course." She hesitated. "I'm happy you're here." David's chest tightened. "I'm happy to be here," he said. Claire smiled. But there was something in her eyes. Something uncertain. "I don't want to push you," she said quietly. "I know you're still figuring things out. But David, I need you to know that I care about you. And if this is only ever going to be friendship, I need to know that now." David's heart pounded. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Didn't know what to say. "I care about you too," he said finally. But I don't know if I'm ready for more than this." Claire nodded. She didn't look surprised. Just sad. "Okay," she said softly. "I understand." David wanted to say more. Wanted to explain. But the words wouldn't come. So they finished cleaning in silence. And when David left that night, he felt like he'd lost something he couldn't name. The next few days were strange. Claire still waved. Still smiled. But there was a distance now. A carefulness that hadn't been there before. David hated it. But he didn't know how to fix it. On Thursday night, Maya asked if she could go to Claire's house. "Not tonight," David said. "Why not?" "Because I said so." Maya frowned. "Did you and Miss Claire have a fight?" "No." "Then why are you being weird again?" David sighed. "I'm not being weird." "Yes, you are. You always get weird when you're scared." David looked at his daughter. She was 7 years old. But sometimes she seemed older. Wiser. "I'm not scared," he said. Maya just looked at him. And David realized she was right. He was terrified. Friday morning, David woke up and made a decision. He couldn't keep doing this. Couldn't keep running. Couldn't keep hiding behind his grief. Sarah was gone. and no amount of guilt or fear would bring her back. But Claire was here, and so was he, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. At 8 o'clock, David walked across the yard and knocked on Claire's door. She opened it, surprised. "David, can we talk?" She hesitated. Then she stepped aside. "Come in." They sat in her living room. The same living room where they'd had coffee, where they'd talked about their losses, where they'd started to heal. "I've been thinking about what you said," David began. "About needing to know where this is going." Claire didn't respond, just waited. "I'm scared," David admitted. "I'm scared that if I let myself care about you, I'll lose you too. I'm scared that I'll forget Sarah. I'm scared that I'm not ready. I'm scared of all of it." Claire's expression softened. "But the thing is," David continued, "I'm more scared of losing you because I was too afraid to try." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I'm not asking you to wait for me," David said. "I'm not asking you to fix me. I'm just asking if you'd be willing to figure this out with me. Slowly. One step at a time." Claire wiped her eyes. "David, I care about you," he said. "More than I thought I could care about anyone again. And I don't know what that means yet. But I want to find out." Claire smiled through her tears. "I want to find out too." David felt something release in his chest. Something he'd been holding onto for 5 years. "So what do we do now?" he asked. Claire reached across the space between them and took his hand. "We start," she said simply. The weeks that followed were not easy. David had moments where he pulled away, where the guilt crept back in, where he looked at Claire and saw Sarah and felt like he was doing something wrong. But Claire was patient. She didn't push, didn't demand, didn't ask for more than he could give. She just stayed. And slowly, David learned what it meant to let someone in again. They went on their first real date in December. Dinner at a quiet restaurant. Nothing fancy. Just the two of them. David was nervous. His hands shook when he picked up his fork. He fumbled through conversation. Apologized too much. But Claire just smiled. "Relax," she said. "It's just me." And somehow that made it easier. They talked about everything. About their kids, their jobs, their hopes for the future. And for the first time in years, David let himself imagine a future that included someone other than just him and Maya. On Christmas Eve, Claire and Leo came over for dinner. Maya and Leo made cookies. Claire helped David cook. They listened to music. They laughed. It felt like home. After the kids went to bed, David and Claire sat by the Christmas tree with mugs of hot chocolate. "This is nice," Claire said. "Yeah. I was worried about the holidays this year. They've been hard since Tom died." "I know what you mean." Claire looked at him. "But this was good." David nodded. "It was." They sat in comfortable silence. The tree lights glowed. Outside, snow was starting to fall. "Can I ask you something?" Claire said. "Sure. Do you still feel guilty?" David thought about it. Really thought about it. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But not as much as I used to." "What changed?" David looked at her. "I realized that loving you doesn't mean I loved her any less." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "David, I'll always love Sarah," he said quietly. "She'll always be a part of me. But that doesn't mean I can't love you too." Claire set down her mug and moved closer. She rested her head on his shoulder. "I'll always love Tom," she whispered. "But I love you too." David wrapped his arm around her. And for the first time in 5 years, he felt at peace. Winter turned to spring. David and Claire grew closer. They had dinners together, went on walks, spent weekends with the kids. They didn't rush, didn't force anything, just let things unfold naturally. But there was still one thing David hadn't done. He hadn't told Maya. Not officially. Not in a way that made it real. And he knew he needed to. One Saturday morning in April, David sat Maya down at the kitchen table. "I need to talk to you about something," he said. Maya looked up from her cereal. "Okay." David took a breath. "You know how I've been spending a lot of time with Claire?" "Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk to you about that. About what it means." Maya tilted her head. "What does it mean?" "It means I care about her. A lot. And I think I might love her." Maya didn't react. She just watched him. "How do you feel about that?" David asked carefully. Maya thought for a moment. "Do you love her like you loved Mom?" David felt his throat tighten. "No. It's different." "How?" "I loved your mom with my whole heart. And I still do. But Claire is someone new. Someone who makes me happy in a different way." Maya nodded slowly. "So you can love two people at the same time?" "Yeah. I think you can." Maya considered this. Then she smiled. Good. Because I love Claire too. David felt tears prick his eyes. You do? Yeah. She's nice. And she makes you smile. And she makes good cookies. David laughed through his tears. She does make good cookies. Maya reached across the table and took his hand. It's okay, Dad, she said. You're allowed to be happy. David squeezed her hand. Thank you. Just don't forget about Mom. Never, David said. I promise. That afternoon, David went to Claire's house. She was in the garden planting flowers. She looked up when she heard him approach. Hey, she said. Hey. David knelt down beside her. I told Maya. Claire's hands went still. What did you tell her? That I love you. Claire's eyes widened. You told her that? Yeah. What did she say? She said it's okay. That I'm allowed to be happy. Claire's eyes filled with tears. She set down her trowel and turned to face him. Do you mean it? She asked quietly. Do you really love me? David looked at her. At this woman who had been patient with him. Who had waited while he figured himself out. Who had never asked for more than he could give. Yes, he said. I love you. Claire smiled through her tears. I love you too. David leaned forward and kissed her. It was soft, gentle, tentative, but it was real. And when they pulled apart, David felt like a weight had been lifted. 6 months later, David asked Claire to move in. It wasn't a grand gesture. Just a quiet question over coffee one Saturday morning. What would you think about us living together? He asked. Claire looked at him. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. Claire smiled. Then yes. The move happened slowly. Claire brought over boxes. One room at a time. They made space. Rearranged furniture. Figured out what stayed and what went. Maya and Leo shared a room. They argued sometimes. But mostly they got along. David and Claire shared a life. It wasn't perfect. There were hard days. Days when the grief came back. Days when David looked at Sarah's photograph and felt the ache all over again. But Claire understood. And on those days, she just held him. 1 year later, on a quiet Sunday morning, David and Claire sat on the porch with their coffee. The kids were inside, playing a board game. Laughing. Arguing. Being kids. Do you ever think about the future? Claire asked. David looked at her. All the time. What do you see? David thought about it. I see us. Here. With the kids. Growing old. Building something that lasts. Claire smiled. I see that too. They sat in comfortable silence. The kind of silence that came from knowing each other. From trusting each other. I never thought I'd be happy again, David said quietly. After Sarah died, I thought that part of my life was over. But it's not. No. It's not. David reached for her hand. You gave me a second chance. And I'll spend the rest of my life being grateful for that. Claire squeezed his hand. You gave me a second chance too. They sat together. Holding hands. Watching the morning sun rise over the quiet street. And David realized something. Love didn't replace love. It just made room for more. 3 years later, David stood in the backyard at a small gathering. It was Maya's 10th birthday. Claire had planned the whole thing. There were balloons. A cake. A dozen kids running around. David watched from the porch. Leo was there, now almost 13. He was helping Maya set up a game. They bickered like real siblings. Claire came up beside David and slipped her hand into his. You okay? She asked. Yeah, David said. Just thinking. About what? About how different things are now. Claire smiled. Good different? Yeah, good different. On the mantel inside, Sarah's photograph still sat in its place. David looked at it every day. He talked to Maya about her. Made sure she knew her mother. Made sure Sarah's memory stayed alive. But he'd also made room for new memories. New love. A new life. And he'd learned that the heart was bigger than he'd ever imagined. It could hold grief and joy at the same time. Loss and hope. The past and the future. Claire leaned her head on his shoulder. I'm glad you stopped running, she said quietly. David kissed the top of her head. Me too. That night, after the party was over and the kids were asleep, David sat alone in the living room. He looked at Sarah's photograph. I hope you're okay with this, he whispered. I hope you're okay with me being happy. The house was quiet, but somewhere, deep in his heart, David felt peace. And he knew somehow that Sarah was okay with it too. Because love didn't end when someone died. It just changed shape. And if you were brave enough to let it, it could grow again. David stood and turned off the light. Then he went upstairs to the woman he loved. And the life they'd built together. One small, brave step at a time. The end.